Certainly, as far as processed food is concerned, Jonathan, it's becoming increasingly difficult. And I think what's happened to us all, even those of us who wouldn't use processed food on a regular or a daily basis, is I think we've lost a kind of innocence in the sense that we did actually believe that if a product claimed to be made from Irish beef, that it was somehow superior, it was safer, that we were on safe ground. Now, that rug has been pulled out from under us, and it has very serious consequences, I think, for the meat industry in general across the EU. But I think we have to remember that the meat industry, the beef industry specifically, is so important to this country that its significance in other countries within the EU, pales by comparison to its centrality to us here. I think it's very commendable indeed that the FSAI were the first body within the EU to blow the whistle on this. I think it underlines the fact that we take the importance of beef to the country very seriously indeed. But gosh, huge questions have been thrown up. Yeah,
Tom, I shudder to ask you this question, given what you do for a living, which is write about fine food. But have you ever actually had a processed meal yourself? Have you ever, at a quiet moment of an evening, gone in and picked something out of the freezer in the supermarket? Yes. I mean, despite the fact that I write about food and wine and so forth, I lead a fairly normal, quiet life. Now, there'll be certain things that I would draw the line at, and I mean, I'm fortunate, unlike some people in society, that I don't yet have to buy hamburgers that cost 10 cents each. I think when you're forced into that position, you can't really expect them to contain an awful lot of actual meat, and that's at a downward pressure on price. I think has a great deal to answer for. It's very significant, I think, that taking the historical perspective on this, we have never spent less of our disposable income on food ever. And that, I think, means that something has to give. In answer to your question, the last processed food I had, it wasn't necessarily processed. It was a very nice ready meal form of chicken curry, and it was fine, and I ate it because I was in a hurry, I was cold and tired, and it was the end of a long day. And I think we've all found ourselves. We've all been that soldier, yeah. But how much did you pay? How much attention did you pay to the label? Did you flick it over?
I'm a bit of a label obsessive, Jonathan. Yes, I did. There were certain things that I wanted not to find there, and it checked out in that sense. I would, however, be the first to say that labelling very clearly means very, very little at this stage. Take for example, the absolutely ludicrous notion that a company in Ireland can import chicken from Brazil or Chile or anywhere they like outside the EU, and perhaps coat bits of it in breadcrumbs, and it can be then labelled as Irish chicken. That's simply wrong. And if you ask me, that kind of legislation is actually designed to facilitate manufacturers in essentially pulling the wool over our eyes, over the eyes of the consumer.
It's a certain percentage of the production has to be carried out in Ireland for it to be called Irish, isn't it?
That's absolutely right. Yes, yeah, and most of us would assume, in our innocence, that all of it, or a very, very large proportion of it, would have to be carried out in Ireland for it to be called.
Tom, has this whole scenario opened the eyes of the consumer, do you think? That we're going to spend a lot more time looking at the label, trying to discern what's in it, and trying to find out whether, if it says it's beef or chicken or whatever, that is actually what it contains? you know, Jonathan, what worries me is that I think the average consumer is getting a little bit bored at this stage. We've come to the point where, in a sense, nothing would surprise us. There are a lot of people saying, "Oh well, horse is a lean meat; it's fine." That's not the point. The point is that we should be getting what it says on the tin, what it says on the packet. But I think the consumer at this stage is kind of punch drunk and just weary of the whole thing. I think consumer confidence in the food chain has been shaken. It's going to take an awful lot to recover that situation. And to be perfectly honest, as somebody who takes a very considerable interest in the source of his food on a daily basis, I think you would get to be a bit cynical, to be quite honest.
But does that not mean you're going to go to your butcher as opposed to your supermarket from now on and pick out food that at least you can have some confidence of the food chain?
Oh, yeah. Yes, that is certainly the case. I mean, I was talking to somebody recently, and we decided that it would actually rather put you off eating anything that's minced or extruded because we don't know what actually goes in there. But the fact is, if you buy meat from a source that you can trust and your local butcher is hopefully more trustworthy than the supermarket. I think it would be simplistic to say that every local butcher is absolutely kosher, no pun intended, whereas supermarkets are some kind of evil empire. I really don't think it's nearly as simple as that.
One more thing to finish up, if we can, Tom. We'll be talking later in the programme about the use of the word fat. Now, we were discussing this on the show last week. It's not politically correct to call people fat anymore, and this survey saying that parents might be doing their children an injustice by not calling them fat and saying, oh, they're just big for their age or whatever, other euphemisms they might want to use. Are we too delicate around the word fat these days, and for fear of offending rather than making the reality known?
I think perhaps we are, but we also have to bear in mind that we live in a world which is very body conscious and which puts enormous pressure on particularly young people to conform to a body morph that in some cases is either unhealthy or impossible. That's one extreme. The other extreme, this worry about using the word fat, if somebody is fat, drawing attention to it by using that word, perhaps rather impolite. I wonder if calling somebody obese actually sounds worse, perhaps. This sensitivity, Jonathan, probably reflects the fact that there are a lot of parents who have children who are heavier than they should be, who may well be saving up problems for themselves in terms of cardiovascular disease, diabetes and so forth in later life. And parents are feeling guilty about it, and they simply don't know how to attack that situation.